step back a little bit, because K&N is a massive organization and obviously a tremendous, it's a very strong reputation in the broader global pharmaceutical supply chain. K&N has supported life sciences and healthcare for quite some time. It's built on industry-leading GXP compliant quality standards. You've got a massive infrastructure. When I did my research for today, 270 plus locations across 60 or more countries. Of course, in order to support the vertical, you've got to have GMP compliant services. You're focused in supporting serialization, returns management, proactive monitoring, as we've talked about, cold chain. Could you share with us some of your thoughts around sort of what are the complexities when you look at that global footprint? What are the complexities associated with operating across such divergent geographies, cultures, markets? Obviously, supply chain infrastructure varies quite dramatically from one country to the next. If you're moving from a very developed market to a developing market, I imagine there are unique nuances or requirements, for example. Could you share with us sort of how does the broader K&N organization really help to leverage that very well-established footprint to support customers' requirements?
So I think it's a great point that you bring out there, Henry, in terms of we have human beings, we have patients at the end of the supply chain that are expecting the same quality of medicine, medication, of healthcare products wherever they sit in the world. As you say, some countries are fortunate enough to have better infrastructure. Some countries, unfortunately, are not quite at that level. And then if we think about the regulatory bodies, the governments that are overseeing the patient safety, they have different standards as well, whether it be the FDA in America, whether it be the MHRA in the UK, Swissmedic in Switzerland, etc. Yes, we found it when we set up the original healthcare program within Kuehne+Nagel nearly 15 years ago now. Well, there was no real and there was no easy standard to follow in order to make sure that we were able to ensure that there was consistency and there was the right level of quality. So I would say that was one of the very early things that we did as Kuehne+Nagel, which was under our QMS to put in place our own healthcare quality standard. We now call that our health chain standard. We have our quality stamp. We have a highly trained and competent group of auditors that support making sure that we are compliant with that standard over the 270 locations that you mentioned. We base that on the WHO standard because we feel that that is the only real global norm that is available that can be utilized everywhere, that makes sense to all of our customers and all of the manufacturers that are using our service. So what have we done? We have used that standard in order to define our quality management system, to define our way of working, to define the way that we train our staff, to define the way that we put in place our SOPs, and we build our facilities and we monitor and map the performance of those facilities. And that works in terms of making sure we can feel consistent, we can be consistently proud about our way of operation. And what would I say, the one thing that we've done to tangibly support that, to make sure that we have, what could you say, a check that it's working is, as an example for air logistics, we work very closely with IATA and we're using their CIV pharma program to make sure that third party independently from us that we're compliant with the standard. And then laterally, clearly we have customer audits that help us to keep on the top of our game, to keep compliant with the standard. And that seems to be working. That will be the way that we will carry on. We will use our standard to, what could you say, simplify all of those different requirements around the world into logistics speak that our people can follow, that our people can stand behind and work with.
And you touched on so many interesting elements. I mean, it makes me think of sort of obviously the focus on ICH, International Conference on Harmonization, in terms of global regulatory expectations. You talked about standards developed by IATA, the International Air Transport Association. I know you and I have both been very supportive of the Time and Temperature Task Force over the years, which is the subcommittee of the Live Animal and Perishable Board Group. When I think about this health chain standard, excuse me, hopefully I have that, or healthcare standard?
Health chain.
Health chain standard. Thank you for the clarification. When I think about this health chain standard that KNN has put in place, I mean, you're driving consistent service standards across different geographies, across different countries. And to do that must require a significant amount of coordination and visibility. And I imagine that visibility is driven by investments in digital connectivity across your network. Maybe could we dig into sort of some of the areas around that digital connectivity in terms of inventory visibility, inventory moves? How do you share that information back with customers so that they have good awareness and insight into the movement of their goods while it's in your care?
So I would say that what you're describing here is one of the fundamental ways that Kuehne+Nagel has set itself up over all of the years that it has operated in the digital and the computer age. So if I'm thinking first of all of air logistics and sea logistics, we have our own transport management system, airlog and sealog, which is used globally by the organization. So that first of all means that we have a single system that has all of our air and sea shipments held within. We then, in terms of connectivity, digital connectivity with our customers, we are using historically EDI type technologies, and we're now moving into more and more into API technologies. So we have a way that we can communicate that information from our internal single TMS to any of the customers that need it. In terms of specialty services that support the health chain, that's where our 24/7 monitoring teams like the hypercare team come in. What we have done is we've built additional capabilities which allow us to do a higher level of oversight, a higher level of checking of those shipments, in order that we know that perfection will be delivered every time. And again, that information can be provided to the customers as they need it. In terms of the receipt of the orders, we are highly connected with the bigger customers through ERP systems like SAP. And I would say, if I'm thinking of TraceLink and what we're doing with yourselves, that's where I'm excited that the smaller customers, the smaller shippers, we now have an opportunity to digitize and to improve the speed that we can connect with them through, let's say, leveraging our expertise within the global standard systems. But we can now find a way to make it cost effective to get the data in real time and ensure the accuracy through a single data entry by having all of the nodes and the high number of connection points that you've got with all of the smaller locations that are part of the healthcare supply chain.
I'm glad you mentioned that, simplifying the ease of integration, the timeliness of integration, the ability to share data across different supply chain partners, really a sort of a true multi-enterprise supply chain collaboration platform that, of course, TraceLink brings to market. But when I think about it from the customer's perspective, which I know is always the way that you and I sort of kind of simplify things, at the end of the day, it's about the qualification process for the customer, right? So the customer's got to have a level of confidence in your services, that they're going to be consistent across geographies, that they're going to be delivered in a timely manner, and that there's this broad infrastructure of data supporting that level of visibility. Maybe could you talk us through sort of what does that qualification process look like when you're either expanding services with an existing customer or maybe bringing a new customer on? What does that process look like from the KNN perspective?
in terms of that onboarding process, for me, what's important initially is to have a very clear understanding of what the end game is. What is the outcome that is required? So we will first of all spend the right amount of time to be clearly understanding what is the problem that the customer is wanting to solve with the interconnection and the handling of that data. And so out of that conversation, I would say comes, well, specifically, what are the data elements and then the metadata elements behind that data that are required in order to ensure that we can have the right data in the hands of the right people at the right time in order to be able to make the decisions either with booking shipments or handling discrepancies with shipments, or let's say organizing the invoice and the payment process at the end. So I don't think, Henry, that there is one, let's say, standard answer to that, but it's a matter of working through the process of identifying the data, the business requirements and the business strategy that is requesting that data and that information to be transferred between the parties, and then how can that be delivered using the IT technologies that exist today. And we all know those IT technologies are becoming more and more mature almost by the second, certainly by the 3-month or 6-month period. So it's becoming easier to deliver those things that our customers are asking us to do.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I think you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, when I look at it, I think of it as the trust, right? It's the trust that the customer has in your organization's ability to address when things don't go well, and drive consistency across processes when they do. Because, you know, when we think about broader pharmaceutical supply chain, there are so many things that are outside of anyone's control, whether it's weather or port strikes or various issues at airports and so forth. So it's really around the ability to handle or heal a shipment or resolve an issue when something's in process. And to do that, you've got to have the right infrastructure and support and visibility and tools and processes to take those corrective or preventative actions. Any thoughts on that?
I love that you've brought up the word trust, because that is one of the key words and the key conversations that is regularly happening within Kuehne+Nagel, within the Roadmap 2026. We realize and we truly and wholeheartedly understand that the customer experience must improve. The customer experience has to be at the center of everything that we do and has to be the reason behind why we come to work. And as you say, the customer has to trust that you are going to be there. The customer is entrusting the shipments, the healthcare products, to Kuehne+Nagel, and we've got to make sure that we are there every step of the way, every second of the day, in order to make sure that happens. I think what I would say is, in terms of the systems and the technology and the data, a lot of that information we've either got or we're very close to being able to get in order to make those interventions. For me, the step that's really, really important now, which I'm working on with the teams within Kuehne, is around making sure we've got the right skills, the right knowledge, the right capability within the teams, such that when that, let's say, misdemeanor happens, when that deviation is identified by the technology, we're able to very quickly understand, well, what is it that's happened? And then secondly, what is it that we need to do in order to be able to heal the process, protect the shipment from any further damage? So I think companies like Kuehne+Nagel are used, let's say, not for the 80% of shipments that go perfectly, or perhaps even the 90% of shipments go perfectly. It's for those shipments that go wrong. As you say, it's for those weather issues, because logistics is dependent on people, it's dependent on the weather and the climate. So there will be unexpected things that happen. How can we respond, and how can we respond as immediately as possible to heal those and correct those issues before they become, let's say, the catastrophe? And let's say, look into the future. How can we use the data to predict that those issues are going to happen, so we can actually heal them before they even become an issue, even become the slightest deviation?
Jon, thank you for that answer. When I think about my own professional career, it's really those opportunities when things don't go well that could give you the opportunity to build that relationship with the customer, because that's really the opportunity to shine. It's the opportunity to embrace the problem and drive that corrective preventative action, and show the customer your ability to address those issues, because that's really the opportunity. It takes me to sort of another area, which is outsourcing. And when I think about the broader industry over the last 10, 20 years, there's just been this continued trend towards outsourcing, whether it's contract manufacturers, contract packagers, divestitures and acquisitions that have been made over the years. When I take a step back and look at the digitalization of the pharmaceutical supply chain, and I look at that in the context of this continued focus on outsourcing, it makes me think that the focus on digitalization becomes that much more important, because the more outsourcing activities that occur, arguably the less level of control that one might have if they don't have the right tools in place, the right digital connectivity to drive visibility. So I was wondering if you could maybe share your thoughts on that topic in terms of continued outsourcing, advancements in infrastructure, technology, warehousing, cold storage, active passive packaging technologies. How is the digitalization of the pharmaceutical supply chain, in your view, going to help bring those elements together to maintain a high level of quality and service?
So I feel in some ways, Henry, that you've already answered the question, and let me give my perspective on your commentary on the industry, which I think is 100% right. We've said it's getting more and more complicated. There are more and more actors involved. The products are getting more valuable. They're getting more sensitive. The consignments are getting smaller, so there are more of them. So I think the first thing to say is that everything is getting more complicated, and associated with that complication, there is more data. And I think let's say both industry and human beings have an expectation there will be more data and more information. That if we look back a number of years, you would never have thought, say, your Amazon package, that you were going to be able to track it all of the way from the warehouse to the delivery driver actually delivering it to your letterbox, to your doorstep. Now that is not the norm, isn't it? That you can track everything all of the way through. So I think there is this desire and this expectation from society that there will be more data as well. So I think all of these items are building up to say we've got to be able to, first of all, collect all of the data, and then secondly, because there are more and more actors involved, find a way of sharing it across all of the different participants, all of the different actors and users of that supply chain. So for me, what have we got to do is we've got to find ways of making sure that we can present our data to a cloud, and then take from that cloud the data that we need. So if I'm thinking of the contributions that Kuehne+Nagel is doing, we are getting more and more connected with our shipping lines, with our airlines, with our hauliers, with our packaging providers, in order that we can both digitally, so paperless, connect in terms of what orders have we got or what consignments are we moving, but also all of the data associated with that. And then I think the same desire and the same requirement rolls to the pharmaceutical shippers, to the healthcare manufacturers, and also the pharmacies and the warehouses at the end of the supply chain. So it's a matter of making sure that we've got really a backbone that will allow us to interconnect and hand over and receive the data that is needed by the individuals within the supply chain to provide the information that the customers are expecting today. And I think there's another element, isn't there, that we don't know what could be expected tomorrow, but if we have that framework and that infrastructure, it will be an enabler for that to happen in the future.
Well, you said I outlined it, but I think you elaborated on that topic far greater than I could have, and I really appreciate that. You know, it's sort of like this, the focus on outsourcing enables great things to occur in the supply chain because it allows companies to really specialize and provide high quality services. But to your point, looking at it from the K&N's perspective, it's really important to have that digital connectivity with the various vendors that you work with to help ensure product quality and patient safety end to end across that supply chain. Any final thoughts for us in terms of where we're all headed here with this life sciences and healthcare supply chain? What is sort of the longer term strategic thoughts or vision for K&N? Any specific long-term investments that you sort of making?
I think, Henry, the long term is very much along the lines of what we've discussed already, that we have to continue in this direction of digitization, of connectivity, of accuracy of data in real time. So that is going to carry on. For me, that is going to be, what could you say, the foundation of everything that happens. The option for non-accurate data, for non-real-time data, that isn't acceptable anymore. So we have to have the data. I think the future is what we all know, that we're all talking about, that we all read about. It's in terms of the artificial intelligence, it's in terms of the machine learning, it's in terms of the large language models. So where do I see the next exciting part of the journey? It's all of this data, all of this information that we've got. How can we identify the real actionable and differentiating insights from that data that will allow tomorrow's shipments to be handled more perfectly, so with more quality, more cheaply or more cost effectively, or to an optimum cost, and at a service that exactly meets what the customer is after. So I would say that for me is the direction, as to how can we really turn the data into valuable insights to drive what we as consumers are wanting. And you can imagine there's probably something around making sure that we've got all of the data on people's smartphone, so they can track everything.
Well, I think we'll leave it there. I want to thank you so much, Jon, for not only your friendship over the many years, but your willingness to come on our Orchestrating Outcomes series. The keen insights that you shared with us today are hugely valuable. We've learned a lot here at TraceLink, and I know our viewers will as well. So thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule. And I look forward to further collaboration. And again, thank you so much.
And thank you from me to you, Henry, on from Kuehne+Nagel to TraceLink. No, it's been great to be part of your interview series. I've truly enjoyed preparing and now taking part with the actual interview today. So I look forward to continuing the relationship with everybody, and I hope people enjoy listening to our conversation.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Orchestrating Outcomes TraceLink series. I want to thank sincerely Jon Chapman, Vice President of Healthcare at Kuehne+Nagel, for joining us in this series. Please stay tuned for future interviews, and we wish you all very well. Thank you.